Daniel Nagy is the man who bumps them out, or rather earns himself a place in Q2. Confirmation there of those times. Top 12 go through. Huff, Coronel, Chris Richard, Zsolt Szabo and Felipe de Sousa do not go through into Q2. And now cars hastily re-prepared for the second session. Nicky Katsberg was on top of the pile ahead of Norbert Mikulis, Rio Michigami, Ted Bjerk and Tom Chilton. Those were the fast five. Esteban Guerreri in 6th, Mehdi Bonani 7th, Nesta Girolami 8th, Jan Ellershey 9th, Daniel Nagy 10th, ahead of Kevin Gleeson and John Philippi. But it's now the battle to make it into the top 5 to go into Q3. And that is what everybody will now be struggling to do.
Cars will be reset. Any fine-tuning that needs to be done. Huffy's obviously his day's done, or not his day. Today, his morning's done. He's got to look forward to a pretty long afternoon now, along with Coronel. That's going to be it's going to be heavy going there, but I think with these conditions around here today, there could be a fair few casualties, so as long as he can keep his nose clean.
The pit lane hooter sounds like the dive, dive, dive klaxon that you always get on submarines in war movies.
The Japanese are into recycling, Martin,
they
so
might be,
you never know.
I was going to say they might be at periscope depth as they drive around, actually. Yeah. Sitting there, go upscope. Oh, right, that's where I am. Yeah. Bizarre sounding pit lane hooter. I quite like that, though. Oh. Dive, dive, dive. Well, heading back in is Felipe de Sousa in the RC Motorsport Lada. So last man out, last man back in.
I imagine you wanted to be a little bit higher up in the pack, but it does look a little bit hairy out there.
Yeah, first of all, it was really difficult for me. The rain was heavier, and I was able to push more, but then in the second flying lap and had somebody in front of me that disturbs me a little bit. And yeah, I'm not 100% confident at the moment. And yeah, it's really good, really difficult circumstance here. And yeah, we'll see what we can do in the race.
And fingers crossed you'll be able to do better. Thank you, Chris.
Well, that was Chris Richard, the man who is driving here this weekend as a prize for winning the European Touring Car Cup. It came as a bit of a surprise to him that he was flown out to Japan. He had to phone the boss from the airport and say, not going to be in tomorrow, going to be in Japan. Really? Yeah, really. Had to send him a picture of him in Japan to prove that he wasn't just having a skivey day off. His boss is very understanding. He works at a logistics company who's also a sponsor in all ways. Name is on the car, but he also pays his normal salary. So he's very understanding about giving him time off for his racing, but this was an unexpected extra day off. Unfortunately, he didn't make it through into Q2, or even remotely dry.
Obviously, we're straight into Q2 now. Michigami's bolted, looking for a clear lap. But the conditions don't seem to be getting any lighter out there. If you're in traffic, it's time to lay it on the line now. So it's who gets into Q3 for top 5 shootout and points, and also who sets the where the reverse grid. So top 12 are into Q2. The top 10 will decide the reverse grid for the first race. So 2 get bumped and they decide their grid positions. If you are in 11th and 12th in this session, then you're set in those positions for qualifying, for the both races, should I say.
Although everybody will shuffle up one in the opening race, because Ryo Michigami, wherever he finishes, will start from the back of the grid because of an engine change. So yeah, but effectively you get no chance of a boost in performance or a boost on the grid. Well, Michigami will undoubtedly be shooting for pole. Whether he gets there or not, we had suggested at the beginning of the qualifying runs that he might have to beat his teammate Norbert Michelis. He might also now have to beat a Volvo or two, since they seem to have found pace again. On board with Norbert Michelis, Michigami is in the ball of spray in front of us.
What I find quite strange, Martin, is obviously in a touring car you don't have the high downforce of a Formula car or that, and you know, the painted curbs on the outside are like ice. Formula cars can get away with them, using them sometimes in the wet because they have got such high downforce. These things, they don't. I'm surprised how much these cars are running onto them, or the drivers are running onto them on the exits, because it's just going to light the thing up and make the wheel spin worse.
But you see, I'm quite glad you said that, actually, because that would have been my general rule of thumb. But then, not being a professional racing driver, what I might think and what actually is the way that it works, I'm not always, I'm afraid, connected in any way, shape or form. But you would think that staying off the white stuff would be advisable. But again, I suppose in these conditions it's about minimum steering and... It's not good. Too cold, too wet, too lumpy. No danger of anybody running a slick this week. I mean, definitely not yesterday, absolutely not today.
Let me throw another scenario to you. There is no restriction on, they obviously have a restriction on the amount of slick tyres they can use over a weekend, a legal restriction. With wets, groove tyres, they have no restriction. But other than Yokohama will have only taken so many wet tyres there.
Well, bearing in mind that when Yokohama loaded up tyres for China and Japan 2 or 3 months ago, or 3 or 4 months ago,
and manufactured them and loaded them up, right? So they will be rationed.
Yes.
And as they are used, tread depth will decrease. So they will have to recycle some tyres over the weekend. So it's who uses them and how they use them over the weekend will be a defining factor, especially with the depth of water that we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And this was the same thing in the World Endurance Race in Fuji a couple of weeks ago, because the volume of water, there's no legal limit to the number of tyres you can have, but there's a practical limit by the number that the manufacturers brought, because they don't bring untold volumes of wet weather tyres with them. And the reason they don't is, first of all, you're carrying around a lot of weight, more than you need to. Secondly, you've got a lot of stock that at some stage you're going to have to throw away, because like food, tyres go off. They have a sell-by date, they have a use-by date, and if you don't use them...
Well, you don't want to ship them around the world. You know, it can cost you $3,000 for a container to ship it around there with a bunch of tyres, which last year they wouldn't have used. And that's to one location.
And if they don't use them this year, they'll have to throw them away and not be able to use them next year, because they'll be out of date.
Correct.
So exactly right. So you're spending money. You've got to have some contingency, but you don't just have a vast mountain of tyres. Oh, well, Yokohama, they're Japanese. Yes, but that's not the point. You can't just pop into your local Yokohama dealer and get another 300 wet weather World Touring Car tyres.
It's like winter tyres. They have to predict, they have to guess in May the previous year and put their name to the allocation they're going to manufacture for the tyres, and they have to guess what the season's going to do. It's almost, it's a gambling thing.
It's like
almost for the tyre companies.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly right. And so yes, there will be a practical limit, and the chances are actually, to make life easy for everybody, that they will say, okay, unless in extreme circumstances, we will limit you to the normal number of tyres that you would have for a weekend. Maybe they're just going with that.
Oh, Neil Hudson's
Katzberg goes top of the pile.
Unlike British touring cars, there is a 16
there is
wet
16
tyre
car
ration for each.
There you go.
So I stand corrected. Good job we got Neil on our side.
Just as well. Just as well somebody knows. Esteban Guerreri fourth. So at the moment, Mikulits, Katzberg, Michigami, Guerreri and Bernani. So Nicky Katzberg, who needs some points to chase his teammate Ted Björk, because Katzberg is de facto second in the championship. Thiago Monteiro is second in the points, 19.5 points ahead of Katzberg. But Thiago Monteiro is in Portugal, and we're not racing there this weekend. So Thiago will drop. I say that, he won't necessarily drop out of second. If there are 2 half-points races, he might be barely a dozen points behind Ted Björk at the end of this weekend. And I'm not saying that there will be 2 half-points races, but it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that we might have at least one. At the moment, with the way the weather is, nothing really is beyond the bounds of possibility. Rio Michigami on another quick lap. MIG Michigami in third. Not quite as quick, but look at the way that he's held that pace through sector 2 and 3. How close will he get? No improvement, so 0.44 away, and he was 0.40 away. In fact, in the last 2 laps, he's gone 0.403, 0.404 and 0.44 away. That's consistently very quick. But it is still consistently 4/10 away. After their first flying laps, by the way, until Katzberg completes this one, 1/1000th of a second between Katzberg and Mikulits. And Katzberg finds another half a second. What I'd like to do, I'd like to put... Is that Katzberg? Is that Earl Ashe's view? It is, yeah, that's his roof camera. I'd like to put Katzberg in one of the larders alongside Earl Ashe and see whether Katzberg can find anything more out of the car he drove last year than Earl Ashe is getting out of it now.
No, I mean, one thing Katzberg is, I always like him because he's on the verge of being just wild, and that's why I like watching him race, because he's flamboyant in the car, he's flamboyant out the car. So,
well, he's got that impetuous, youthful ability. And attitude, and he's got lots and lots of skill, you know, and there's that sort of Max Verstappen factor there as well, isn't there, you know, where he's got
I would say
all of the vim and vigour and lots
the more
of car
Max
control.
Verstappen age group, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, yeah, very much.
Katzberg is young, but he's not, he's sort of a bit more seasoned now.
Agreed. And actually be interesting to see where El Ashe ends up in 2 or 3
He'll end up in
seasons.
somewhere professional.
Well, you know, he'll be racing in Le Mans next year. I see him in the World Endurance Championship, possibly in the next season. I think he's that good. I think he would be a very, very big star. John Philippi is not going to go through. Top 5 at the moment: Katzberg, Mikulits, Michigami, Guerreri and Björk, who was just shooting into the pits. Michigami's already in. I think that was another Honda going in as Ted Björk came to the line. Björk is in the top 5. Behind him, Bernani tilting at the line. Come on, clocks, catch up. No, Bernani in 7th. Chilton's bailed on this. He's in 9th. Gleeson is in 10th. Yet again, there'll be a larder on... no, there won't. Nagy. Daniel Nagy in 11th. He's going to start the opening race from pole position.
We could have a Honda pole for both races.
That's the way it's going to work, isn't it? Because they count backwards from 10th up. So 10th should be Gleeson, and then Michigami should get dropped to the back and everybody shuffles forward. Is that the way it works?
Yes, it should do, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
right.
So not Daniel Nagy, no. So Nagy and Philippi will be 11th and 12th, except they'll start 10th and 11th in race 1 because Michigami will be moved back. Okay, so it is Kevin Gleeson. Sorry, I'm getting confusing myself completely. Kevin Gleeson in 10th position will be our opening race DHL pole sitter, the first American ever to start from pole position in a World Touring Car Championship race.
Yeah, but reverse grids don't count, do they, Martin?
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
They do when it's a stat. Well, it's a pole, somebody starts from the front of the grid.
No, they don't.
That's right. That's right. When Alex went to congratulate Yann Lachey for starting on, for getting 10th place in Morocco, his first ever World Touring Car, he said, yes, but it is not really pole.
That is...
no, I agree.
I didn't know the lad that well at that point, and he went up 100-fold in my estimations when he came out with that reply.
Absolutely.
And I've been a fan ever since.
I agree entirely, and it's, you know, especially for a kid. But for Kevin Gleeson to start a wet race from P1, I hate saying P1, from pole position, it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity. For him, the disappointment is that Tom Chilton is alongside him, and Tom Chilton might have the experience. So Gleeson on pole, Chilton alongside. So I was getting very excited and counting out Rio Michigami from the wrong direction. So it's once the grid is fixed, then he'll be dropped to the back. So yeah. So Kevin Gleeson having a quick squeeze through the scrutineering bay.
The big scout not to make it into the top 5 is Ted Bjork.
Yep, championship leader.
Knocked out by his very own teammate, who's not in the title fight, Nestor Girolami.
By 2 of his teammates.
Well,
2 Volvos got through.
Katzberg's still got aspirations, hasn't he? He's still got a crack at the title.
Absolutely. Two Volvos got through, and neither of them was driven by the championship leader. Ted Bjork said he struggled in free practice 1 and free practice 2 a bit, and was hoping to improve the pace.
And the rain keeps it coming.
Yeah, doesn't it? I mean, it's relentless, and you know, God love them. The Japanese fans are, you know, as fanatical as anybody else. Richard Rogers, I'm not sure I've seen Richard wearing quite so much clothing all in one go, and he's probably on change of clothes number 2 for the day already. He's the FIA media delegate.
Don't make Kevin Gleeson stand out in the rain.
Well, Alex is standing out in the rain. I hope she brought proper, you know, high-heel wellies like
she takes her wellies like everywhere.
Louise. She doesn't. She had soaking wet feet in China, didn't she? She's gone, you know, she's gone with some jewel-encrusted ballet pump or something, which is very lovely.
6 yen specials.
I'm very happy to chat to this gentleman. Your first World Touring Car pole position. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a bit of a bumpy ride so far this season. I made mistakes. The cars had some issues at times. They weren't the best. So to come out here in tough conditions, we actually had a diff fail in practice 1, and the guys were able to get it changed quickly in between sessions. So, you know, I'm thrilled. It's definitely a positive step forward. I'm just happy for the guys, and yeah, let's see what happens today.
Given that the race is obviously going to be in pretty tricky conditions, how will you feel getting off that line?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I don't know if they've decided if we're doing a standing start or a safety car start, but yeah, it's going to be tough. Always a standing start in the rain is difficult, and I didn't get too many practice ones, so we'll see.
Get practicing. We're very pleased for you.
Well, what it does underline is that he's really starting to feel his way into the car again, doesn't it? And as he said, you know, beginning of the season was a bit tough. He hasn't done all the races. And so, you know, he is feeling his way back into it, and definitely looking like he had plenty of pace.
But Martin, he's 10th. He's not got pole.
A win's a win.
Yeah, a win's a win.
Win's a win.
But we're all patting each other on the back, and he's 10th.
I'm just saying it. Yeah. However,
if that converts to a win, fair dues for him.
He's ahead of half.
Well, that is a very valid point.
In not the best car ever built for World Touring Cars.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, and so you know, you
the best Russian car, maybe.
Best Russian car ever built for World Touring Cars by a long margin.
The FIA WTCC is delivered by DHL.
The 6-day series blasts off in London, and Belgian raiders are back for more. But, spoiler alert, Cav is in the house. Live today on Eurosport 1, the final day of the 6-day London.
The FIA WTCC is delivered by DHL.
Green flag and lots of wheel spin for Nesta Girolami. Q3 underway here at the very sodden twin ring Motegi. Trying to think of a wet weather replacement for twin ring, and water wings. It's not working really, is it?
This actual session, this Q3 here in Motegi in Japan, is wide open. Any one of these top 5 drivers could be on pole.
Yes. This
afternoon, any one of them.
And the problem now is there's no one else to judge it by. You are on your own. Now, in the dry, after, 2.5 hours of dry running, that's fine. In the pouring rain, when it's changed in the 10 or 15 minutes since you were last out, the person who's on pole is going to be the person who doesn't make a mistake or makes a less big and less costly mistake than all the others. Because
a few puddles there he's going through, isn't there? Now, there's 2 ways Girolami could look at this. It's either what or bust, because he's going to be 5th. He's going to be 5th at worst, even if he goes off. So he obviously doesn't want to put it in the wall, but there's a fair bit of runoff areas here.
He's going to be 4th at worst.
Well,
because Michigami, I don't know, this is for race 2. Yeah, sorry, no, yeah, so 5th at worst. Yeah.
But if you're too safe,
you're going to be 5th at worst.
Then you're going to be 5th.
And you won't ruin it.
So you're better off just going for it, aren't you?
Yeah, hang it out a bit.
But you do set the benchmark for everyone else to...
Well, and that's almost part of the joy of going first. Conditions are as close to what they were when you came into the pit lane, and they may not be for anybody else. And secondly, everybody else has then got to try and push against your time, not against their own judgment.
Yeah, and obviously in Q1 and Q2 there's multiple cars going round. In Q3 there's not, so the water isn't getting cleared from the any potential aquaplaning areas.
And unless you make a real Horlicks of it, putting in a good quick lap does put pressure on the others. You can almost see every single element of the braking, turning, settling, transition there, because the car is so much softer than the way we're used to seeing racing cars these days.
Yeah, you can see the front end just dive down, can't you?
That's really dramatic. That's like watching old racing car footage, isn't it? 80s stuff that didn't have aerodynamics, but just had nice compliant suspension. So Nesta Girolami on his flying lap then, and heading out behind him has gone his fellow Argentine, Esteban Guerreri.
It's a solid lap we're seeing at the moment, but I don't think it's spectacular on the time-wise compared to what we've seen. I might be wrong. See where he comes out.
At least he's got through. It's all a bit touchy-feely, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not the
7 and 8.
conditions.
There's that little river across out of 8.
That's where he went off in FP2.
Yeah.
That negotiates that okay.
There's a river across the exit there as well, isn't there?
See how tight he is on the exit.
So out of 9 up towards turn 10. All the way around the outside, really V'ing that off. Way out to the outside. And then the longest straight on the track down to turn 11. And then you dive down underneath the oval circuit. That's where those cars are parked above you, through the river of water there. It takes your breath away every time the car changes direction when it hits that standing water. Last corner, and rushing towards the finish line. It's a long way up the straight.
That's a good lap. That's
2:09.8.
That's a strong lap. That's a good benchmark for them all to fire for.
It was neat. There was no big oversteery moments. He didn't run out wide.
Getting it in the 9s, though. That's a good lot of pressure onto the guys who are following him.
Now, what did he do in... Didn't quite get what Guerrero was saying there.
Guerrero's been spectacular all year, so he's not afraid of hanging it out, this boy.
No, he isn't, is he?
Nice big wide exit onto the wide entrance. Tight exit, should I say.
And this is where he's really in the lap of the gods, because he's trying to push a car that he doesn't know beyond anything almost that he's done in it so far. Less fuel, fresher tyres.
Well, they're telling him maps for the engine to run.
Oh, right, I thought you said
Maybe.
big slide, so it was mix 5, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that would have been before the beginning of the lap, so yeah.
Oh, he's up.
There you go, 23 thousandths of a second. So this is the battle to be best Argentine for a start, because there's all that going on, isn't there?
Yeah, you forgot about that.
If you and Flash were both here, you'd both be going, yeah, just having a little, little poke in a very friendly manner. And it was really noticeable as well when, after the race, when Girolami and Guerrero are really in cahoots. I mean, not that they sort of work together, but they're strangers abroad, aren't they? So they got that shared heritage that unites them.
Lost in the middle sector, though.
1900s back.
That's a fair bit to pull back, that is, Martin. 2/10.
And what is car and what is driver in that mixture? We don't really know, do we? We did hear from Nicky Katzberg's engineer that he was losing to Norby in sector 2, but he was better in the other sectors. So that's the sort of opposite of what we've seen here between the Volvo and the Honda. Don't really want to see them when there's only one car on track, and all that and everything, and I'm sure they don't want to see it either. What would have happened if he'd gone off into the gravel there?
Girolami looked very committed through this final sector, so I'll be surprised if
Guerrero's got quite a lot of understeer there out onto the corner.
Pull it back.
Look at the difference. 1,000th of the difference in sector 2 and sector 3. Comes out 2,600s behind. Okay, so he's going to be 5th at worst. And don't forget, he's also going to have to do something he's never done in his life before in World Touring Cars. As soon as this is done, is he going to go off and have a cup of coffee and a think? No, he's going to go into Mach 3. Yeah. So there's another new little wrinkle that he'll have to think about. Something that he's occasionally watched, possibly with a passing glance, but because he's not been involved in, will much more likely have been debriefing with the engineers in the truck, poring over his own data. Mix 5 on the straight. So Ryo Michigami, this is 2017, the 21st year that this track has been running. It opened 20 years ago. And there's Ted Bjerg, the Volvo driver, who's not going in Q3.
But he will be going in Mach 3.
He will be going in Mach 3. Ryo Michigami reckons he's been racing here all of those 20 years. Maybe not every single year in the 20, but I should think close to. So can he use that knowledge and experience? Long convoluted tale of Honda cars. Guerrero is driving the car that is Thiago's regular car, which was driven by Gabriele Tarquini in China. The other two cars from China should have come to Japan to be fixed before going to Macau, but there was a travel embargo on flying freight in China, and so they weren't able to fly, and so they couldn't get them back in time. So Rio is driving a test car, which was flown from Yas in Italy, where they could fly from, and built up. And then Norby's car is a spare car made out of a spare shell and other parts that were already here in Japan. So Norby's car has never raced before, and Rio's car has never raced before either. Only one of the 3 Hondas here this weekend was actually in China 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So if the Honda boys are looking a little tired, and the reason that Ryo Michigami's got a penalty is because the engine that was in the car in Yas in Italy was not the engine that was in the car in China, and therefore he's had an enforced engine change. So that's what that was all about. Nesta Girolami remains top. Esteban Guerreri second, Ryo Michigami third. Is it wetter now because there are no cars circulating?
Well, it's up to Michelitz to prove the point.
Did Nesta have the best of the conditions, or can Norby produce something special here? He's been quickest so far in just about every lap he's turned here. He likes coming here, he likes the country, he always feels he does well here in Japan. He has 1 win under his belt, won the opening race in 2013. So where is he compared to Girolami? Half a second up. Crikey. Now don't forget, Norby was not actually the fastest car. That is just starting up behind. That's Nicky Katzberg leaving the pit lane. But he will already have left the pit lane.
He's got to keep it on the black stuff, though.
Yeah. But he hasn't had any problems with that so far.
The car looks incredibly stable.
Doesn't
the
it?
Honda carrying the full 80-kilo weight penalty this weekend, so these conditions are actually playing to Honda. With 8/10 up now as well.
Now there's still that issue with you've got more to slow down and more to accelerate, and it's not a level circuit, you know, there is downhill and uphill here. But the effect is less because it's wet, because you're accelerating to a lower speed and braking from a lower speed? Or is it just that the extra weight, does it give you a little bit more traction? Girolami impressed, 1.3 seconds.
Hasn't finished the lap yet, though.
Crikey. Wow. Short shifting there, wasn't he, out of the corner to avoid the wheel spin. Uses the torque of the turbo motor. How fast is this going to be? 0.9, so he lost 4/10 to Girolami in the final sector. But, oh boy, he could afford to, couldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, whether they radioed him and he played it safe.
He'll have his split on his dash, won't he? I think he was being a little bit cautious there in the final 2 or 3 corners where it all just gets a little bit lively.
But has he factored in, have they, Yas and Honda and Michelitz factored in the Katzberg element yet? So this guy, he's normally hero or zero, isn't he?
Yep.
He does throw everything at it.
2:08.411 was his Q2 lap. Again, you can hear the drivers having to get off the throttle and just wait for the wheels to stop spinning before they can really give it all the juice. Into turn 3. Tighter and opens up through
Again,
corner
out
four.
using that outside curve. I reckon that'll cost him time, that will. Getting into the throttle. Yeah, he's half a second down on Michelitz, even in sector 1.
Ooh! Got in there a little bit lively, didn't he? Comes out between 5 and 6 under the banking. Under the oval speedway. I suppose it is banked all the way around. And look at the amount of water still being thrown up by these tyres, spraying out of the wheel arches, out of corner 8, down to the treacherous corner 9. And there's 2 or 3 rivers across there. Honda boys are looking fairly happy. 1.14 down, Nicky Katzberg. Norby's lap, 2 minute 8.89. Lost a lot of time in sector 2. That's his engineer Paul with the headset on, just encouraging him. This should be enough to see him go second. 1.1 away. And Norby gave away time in the final sector. It's going to be tight between Katzberg and Girolami for the outside front row. He's not going to take pole, surely. And it's a 209.26, so
He pulls it back in the last one, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Wow.
Couple of mistakes there in sector 1 and 2, but good end of home. Pink in sector 3 and 4. Copy that. The only real big mistake was turn 5, entry over there, because of braking too late. I lost a lot of time, 3 to 4 tenths in one corner, so.
Well, there you go. Our pole sitters for the opening race and the main race today are now known. It'll be Kevin Gleeson in the RC Motorsport Lada in the opening race. And this is the mistake into turn 5. Yeah, just carried a little bit more speed in than the rear tyres could deal with. That snap of oversteer, Matt, and that just drags the background and slows you down.
Yeah, he'll have washed wide, so he'll have missed the apex and also scrubbed speed, so it'll have had a bit of a double whammy on him, but yeah, he did well to recover from that, and still got a front row start, some good points in the back, but Michelitz was solid, wasn't he?
Yep.
I wouldn't say he was on fire, he was just super solid.
Well, listen,
really
he was,
clean,
you know,
really clean lap.
What was it? 1.4 seconds up or something after 3 sectors, then he didn't have to blaze it, did he? You know, 9 tenths faster than Girolami. That threw the gauntlet down, and Katzberg had to go and get it, and he had to push hard, and in the end he pushed just a fraction too hard. So, first man out, Nesta Girolami. Very nearly ended up with the front row start. It may just have been fractionally better conditions for him after all the other cars had been out a few minutes earlier. But he did a very strong job. Nicky Katzberg coming up not a long way shy. That one error, as he said, probably cost him 3 or 4 tenths. He was only 3 or 4 tenths away from Norby in the end. So all 3 Hondas and 2 of the Volvos were in Q3, and with our DHL pole sitter is Alex Le Gui.
Exactly what Honda needed. Norby Michelitz, that was an electrifying lap. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Actually, it wasn't, because I made 2 stupid mistakes. Maybe I tried a bit too hard. Nicky was quite fast in Q2, and I knew that I need a perfect lap. And braking for turn 11, and I went a bit wide, lost a couple of tenths, but yeah, the car was just amazing, good enough to be even like this on the front row or even on pole position. I'm really happy for the team. Congrats to Rio and Esteban. We have all the 3 cars within the top 5. which is really great news for the championship. So, of course, I'm looking at the Drivers' Championship, but same importance has the manufacturers' points. So really happy for the team. Thanks to the guys. I had an amazing car throughout the weekend, and yeah, we were pushing the races as well.
Nobby, well done.
Thanks.
Don't often see him without a smile on his face, and it's well earned there. So Norbert Michels ahead of Volvo's Nicky Kausberg and Nesta Girolami. Esteban Guerrero, Riamir Chigami also in the top 5. Then Ted Björk just missing out in 6th, Mehdi Banani 7th, Jan Erlaché in 8th position. And that's how they will start for the main race.
Mehdi Banani pulling a bit of a result out the back there, because he's been...
didn't look like he had that pace in him during free practice. He didn't like the wet
conditions in China. He didn't like the wet conditions this morning earlier on. So, you know, to be quickest Citroen there in front of the other guys, and especially, you know, he's in front of Chilton and Huff.
Yeah. I wonder whether
down with the dead man.
Wonder whether Tom was going for that front row for the opening race. Chance of winning and getting 25 points as opposed to being in the middle of the top 10 for both races. I think he felt probably that he wasn't going to get in Q3, and that then means the opening race grid is more important.
On his competitiveness 2 weeks ago in these conditions, Martin, I'd have put money on him being there in the top 5 and shooting for pole.
And yet, you know, different track, same-ish conditions, but the pace maybe not in the car. I mean, the Citroens, you know, Banani, Chilton, Huff, 6th, 7th, 8th in the championship, 5th, 6th, 8th in the championship, but, you know, couldn't match that in terms of pace here. So maybe the Citroen just doesn't quite have what it takes to work in these conditions. Or maybe the team...
We haven't been saying that the last 3 years, have we?
Well, I was going to say maybe the team haven't got the information to allow them to get it to work in these conditions.
Maybe.
Because I'm not entirely sure that the owner's manual was passed over with all the pages by Citroen Racing.
What are you trying to say, Martin?
I'm trying to say that's the end of qualifying, and it is still Mach 3 and 2 races to go here today, because it is not Saturday, it is Sunday. Because the typhoons, the weather diversions and everything else, the weekend has been truncated essentially into almost 1 day of track action, with just 1 free practice session yesterday afternoon on Saturday. We started with free practice at 8 this morning. Qualifying is done. Mach 3 comes up very shortly. Another first for Esteban Guerrero in the Castrol Honda. And then after a brief lunch pause, we'll be heading full tilt into the afternoon's racing.